I woke up to the shrill sound of my phone ringing, Jane's number flashing on the screen. Dread coiled in my gut as I answered, her venomous voice slicing through the line. "Pack your bag, Sarah. Mark's through with you. We found someone better, so there's no point in crying now." My heart sank, but a flicker of defiance ignited within me. After all I'd sacrificed for this thankless family? "I won't leave until we bury Stan, and I settle a few things. This isn't over." I hung up, hands trembling. Marrying Mark had been my greatest mistake, blinded by the hope of giving his daughter Ashley the loving home I'd craved. But his mother Jane's iron grip on the family had steadily crushed that dream, reducing me to a glorified maid. I dragged myself to the kitchen, the smell of freshly brewed coffee offering little comfort. Stan's faithful golden retriever Bailey nuzzled my hand, his warm eyes conveying a sympathy this household sorely lacked. As I stroked his fur, I steeled myself for the emotional onslaught to come. The day passed in a blur of funeral preparations, punctuated by Jane's scathing remarks about my inadequacies as a wife. Mark remained emotionally distant as ever, while Ashley openly mocked my grief. Only Stan's hallowed presence in the silent casket brought me solace. At the wake, I found myself unconsciously gravitating towards Stan's bedside photographs, treasured images of the loving grandfather he'd been before illness stole his vitality. In those final months, our bond had blossomed from my role as his caregiver into a friendship forged by shared suffering. Amidst the hushed condolences, a firm hand squeezed my shoulder. I turned to see Lawyer Jenkins, Stan's trusted confidant, his somber gaze conveying a world of meaning. "He prepared for this," he murmured. "We'll discuss it soon." Those cryptic words offered a glimmer of hope, but Jane's incendiary glares reminded me that this family's axe would fall swiftly upon me once the niceties concluded. Perhaps Stan had foreseen their treachery and made provisions, a lifeboat in this turbulent sea of heartbreak and deceit. As mourners trickled out, I lingered beside Stan's casket, gently brushing away a stray tear. Though the path ahead seemed bleak, a renewed determination took root. Whatever storm loomed, I would weather it with the same resilience that had carried me through life's earlier tragedies. Stan's gruff voice echoed in my mind. "You're tougher than you look, kid." With a steadying breath, I vowed to honor the faith he'd placed in me, no matter how turbulent the days ahead might be. I settled onto the worn couch, cradling a steaming mug of chamomile tea. Even its soothing aroma couldn't dispel the ache that had taken root ever since that dreadful phone call. As the rain pattered against the window, memories of my tumultuous past resurfaced, unbidden. "Sarah, honey, you've got to pull yourself together." My Aunt Maggie's voice rang in my ears, as clear as the day I'd arrived on her doorstep at 16, clutching the tattered remnants of my childhood. "Your folks wouldn't want you moping around feeling sorry for yourself." I'd nodded numbly, my parents' sudden passing still an open wound. With no other family, Aunt Maggie had taken me in, her tough love the anchor that kept me from drifting entirely. Those first few years had been a blur of grief counseling, part-time jobs, and fighting to keep my grades up amid the emotional turmoil. But Aunt Maggie's watchful guidance, coupled with an indomitable will I'd inherited from my father, had propelled me through the darkness. "You've got to make your own way, kid," she'd said gruffly, stubbing out her cigarette. "The world ain't gonna hand you nothing on a silver platter." Her words had rung true through the grueling years of physical therapy school, working double shifts at the diner to make ends meet. But I'd clawed my way to the top, fueled by a burning drive to craft the stable life I'd been denied. That's what had drawn me to Mark. His daughter Ashley's haunted eyes had mirrored my own orphaned youth. I'd been determined to spare her the same loneliness that had nearly consumed me, resolving to create the nurturing family I'd craved. How tragically those noble intentions had been perverted by the corrosive influence of Mark's mother Jane and her incessant belittling. With each snide remark, each deliberate slight, she'd chipped away at my sense of self-worth. "Did you really think someone like you could be part of our family?" Her nasal whine grated in my mind's ear. "You're nothing but a charity case, letting us support you out of pity." I forced the memory away, fingers tightening around the ceramic mug. Jane's disdain had only been exacerbated by Ashley's escalating cruelty, my treasured childhood keepsakes inexplicably misplaced, the framed photos of my parents somehow accidentally shattered. Mark had been my sole ally in those dark days, his smiles and squeezes of reassurance the only thing anchoring me amidst the emotional tempest. Yet even his support had waned as the years wore on, his commitment to appeasing his domineering mother slowly eclipsing the vows we'd sworn. I sipped the tea, its warmth a fleeting comfort. While the path before me seemed daunting, Stan's parting words remained a rallying cry. I may have been the underdog, battered and browbeaten, but the same fighting spirit that had delivered me through life's earlier trials was still alive. "This isn't the end," I murmured aloud, as if uttering the vow could render it real. Not by a long shot. Whatever treachery Jane and her cohorts had concocted, I would meet it head-on with the same resilience that had defined my journey. They'd sown the wind through years of emotional torture. Now it was time to reap the whirlwind. The rhythmic beeping of the machines provided a somber soundtrack as I gently sponged Stan's withered arms. His labored breaths rattled in the stillness of the bedroom we'd converted into his sick room. "Easy there, kiddo." His gravelly voice broke the silence, his trembling hand patting mine. "You've got to take it easier on yourself. Jane and that wretched brood of hers aren't worth this much fuss." I managed a weary smile, brushing a damp strand of hair from his brow. "You know I can't do that, Stan. You're the only one in this family who's treated me like, well, family." He harumphed, those rheumy eyes holding a glimmer of tenderness. "Ain't no fault of yours this sorry lot turned out so sour. If I could do it over again." His voice trailed off with a wistful sigh. In those unguarded moments, I caught fleeting glimpses of the past that weighed so heavily on him, the long hours invested in his medical practice, the slow fracturing of his household as his wife and children's bitterness took root. "I won't let you bear this burden alone," I said firmly, meaning every word. Stan's gruff humanity amidst the relentless cruelty had been my sole lifeline these past few years. He squeezed my hand, his gaze earnest. "Mark's gonna try to turn you out soon as I'm gone. You know that, don't you? Already got the papers drawn up to cast you aside like some busted piece of equipment." First, my throat tightened at the casual viciousness, but I gave a resolute nod. "Then we'll just have to make sure that doesn't happen." A ghost of a smile played across Stan's lips as he patted my hand again. "Let me tell you a little story about this prissy little tax inspector who came sniffing around a few years back." I settled in to listen, savoring these moments of wry camaraderie and hard-fought wisdom. Whatever challenges loomed, having Stan in my corner was the greatest reassurance I could ask for. In the days that followed, I doubled my efforts to ease Stan's discomfort, our conversations taking on a bittersweet poignancy. Whether regaling me with pranks from his medical school days or offering nuggets of unexpected life advice, he seemed determined to share every scrap of himself before the end. The night I found him slumped over his bedside table, I thought my world had shattered irrevocably. "Stan! Stan!" I shook his shoulders frantically until those eyes flickered open, his breathing shallow. He gripped my arm with surprising strength, his gaze boring into mine. "Sarah, you listen to me, you hear? I'm leaving you set up proper." A racking cough cut him off as I fumbled for the emergency call button. "Save your strength, Stan. The paramedics are on their way." He wheezed, mustering what little remained of his formidable will. "Don't." Another cough racked his brittle frame. "Don't let them." I squeezed his hand, blinking back hot tears. "I won't, Stan. I promise." Those cloudy eyes held mine for a heartbeat longer before rolling back in his head. Grief engulfed me, yet within its depths smoldered a renewed determination, a promise to honor his faith and make good on those vows, no matter who stood in my way. His final, wheezing exhalation marked the end of an era and the beginning of my war against those who would see me crushed. The days blurred together into an endless cycle of medications, sponge baths, and Stan's labored breathing. I clung to his bedside, savoring each lucid moment like a priceless gem amidst the fog of his deterioration. "You're doing great, kid." He'd rasped those words repeatedly, his papery hand enveloping mine with a surprising warmth. "Don't let them grind you down, you hear?" I'd nod mutely, throat constricted by the emotion those simple reassurances stirred. In those moments, Stan's rough compassion outshone the cold indifference that had seeped from the rest of the household. Jane's periodic sweeps through the sick room were accompanied by her trademark snide comments about the stale air and my apparent incompetence. Honestly, Sarah, couldn't you have opened a window? Or did they not cover basic hygiene in that cow college you attended? Mark would trail in her wake, features etched in discomfort, whether from his father's condition or his mother's histrionics, I could never tell. His gaze would slide past mine, our once warm connection frayed by years of eroding resentment. Ashley, for her part, made no attempt to mask her disdain for the grim realities unfolding. I can't be around all this dying oldness, she'd sneer, flouncing from the room with a roll of her eyes. It's like totally morbid. Only Bailey, Stan's faithful golden retriever, provided a constant, uncomplicated source of comfort. He'd settle at the foot of the bed, his liquid brown eyes fixed on Stan's withered form as if standing in unwavering vigil. In those still moments, I could almost convince myself that affection still flickered in this hollow shell of a home. Then, one leaden afternoon, chaos erupted, Stan's heart monitor shrilling as his frame contorted with a massive seizure. I shouted for help as Jane and the others came running, profane curses spilling from their lips. The paramedics arrived with practiced urgency, blocking me from reaching Stan's convulsing body. Through the tangle of limbs and shouted orders, I locked eyes with him for the barest instant, those cloudy irises holding a lifetime of rueful regret and a silent plea. At the hospital, a grim-faced doctor briefed us in terse clinical tones about Stan's catastrophic stroke and diminishing oxygen levels. The prognosis was grim. Even if he regained consciousness, his quality of life would be severely compromised. "What about extraordinary measures?" Jane cut in, her voice shrill with insistence. "Surely there are procedures." The doctor raised a hand, shaking his head. "In cases this severe, it would only serve to prolong the inevitable pain and suffering. I would advise exploring palliative options and preparing for—" "No," Jane's shriek lanced through the hushed waiting room. "He's not giving up that easily, not while I still need—" She caught herself, shooting a furtive glance at the doctor before smoothing her face into an unconvincing mask of grief. I watched in sickened silence, the grotesque reality finally crystallizing. They didn't care about Stan's comfort or dignity. He represented their final hope for securing an inheritance, no matter how much suffering it cost him. My hands clenched with impotent rage, even as Jane turned those glinting eyes upon me in wordless warning. 2 days later, the machines powering Stan's ravaged form finally fell silent. As his loved ones clustered around with practiced solemnity, I felt his spirit release in one final sigh of liberation. The shackles of their greed forever broken. My role as caregiver had ended, but a new passenger had boarded this runaway train of heartbreak and betrayal, cold, implacable vengeance. Jane's cruel gaze drilled into me like a dagger's point, but this time I met it with steely defiance. "Pack your things and get out." Her nasal tones cut through the stifling air like a scythe. "You're utterly useless to this family now." A tremor of grim satisfaction coursed through me as I straightened my spine. "I'm not going anywhere," I said quietly, "until we put Stan to rest, and I settle a few scores that are long overdue." I stood my ground as Jane's face purpled with apoplectic rage. "How dare you make demands after everything we've done for you?" she sputtered. "We kept a roof over your worthless head out of pity." Mark shifted uncomfortably beside her. "Sarah, maybe we should all take a step back and—" "Don't you coddle this ingrate." Jane's shrill tones sliced through his attempts at diplomacy. "I want her out before the funeral. She'll only make a spectacle with her hysterics." Jaw clenched, I fought for composure in the face of her venomous tirade. Exploding in impotent fury would only vindicate her disdain. Ashley sidled up beside her grandmother, smirking derisively. "Yeah, beat it, Sarah. We don't need some sad sack charity case raining on the parade." She snapped her gum obnoxiously. "It'll be a relief not having you moping around anymore." I fixed my gaze on Mark, willing him to reclaim the decency I'd once loved him for, but his eyes skittered away guiltily, and I knew in that moment he'd traded his backbone for Jane's approval long ago. Mustering every ounce of poise, I held up a staying hand. "I'll go once we've laid Stan to rest properly. After that." I let the implication hang, heavy as a guillotine blade. Jane opened her mouth, but whatever retort she intended withered in the face of my resolute stare. For once her raptor glare had found its match. The following days were a study in forced civility and bitten tongues. Only when making the requisite funeral arrangements did our battle lines dissolve briefly into an uneasy truce. Jane may have been a viper, but even she understood the sanctity of mourning traditions. The memorial service itself was a grotesque pageant filled with Jane's crocodile tears and fulsome eulogies that made a mockery of Stan's memory. I sat hunched in the front pew, fists clenched as she droned on about what an exemplary father and provider he'd been. The hypocrisy oozed like runny eggs, and I fought not to retch. Behind me, Ashley's theatrical sobbing left damp patches on the shoulders of her overpriced dress. Only Mark's face remained impassive throughout the garish display. Finally, blessedly, it ended. The somber procession trailed out, leaving me alone to crouch before Stan's simple oak casket. With trembling fingers, I traced the carved initials as a lifetime of memories cascaded over me. His gruff chuckle, the gleam of mischief in his eyes, the quiet pride as I mastered caring for him. "You didn't deserve this circus, Stan," I murmured, fighting the sting of tears. "But I'll make it right, no matter what it takes." A faint scuffing behind me broke the reverie. I turned to find Jane framed in the vestibule, those hawkish features arranged in an expression of patented disdain. "I want you gone in the morning," she pronounced flatly. "The lawyers will be in touch about finalizing the inheritance?" My voice sliced through her words like a scalpel. "Yes, I imagine there's much to discuss on that front." Her brows knitted in bewilderment as I rose fluidly and brushed past her without a backward glance. Let the crones stew in impotent confusion for now. Soon enough, the tables would spin with such ferocity that even her unfeeling heart would reel. Tomorrow was the first day of a new future, one built from the wreckage of their betrayal. I only hoped Stan could see it unfurl from whatever tranquil beyond he now occupied. As I exited into the brisk evening air, Lawyer Jenkins materialized from the shadows like a wizard conjuring from the mist. "Shall we take this to my office, Miss Turner?" he murmured, those glinting eyes holding a universe of secrets. I nodded curtly, falling into step beside him as the sky surrendered to an inky everfold of possibilities. A tense silence hung in the air like a suffocating fog as we assembled in Lawyer Jenkins' austere conference room. Jane's eyes bored into me with the intensity of a laser cutter, daring me to make the first incendiary move. Mark shifted uncomfortably in his seat, loosening his tie as beads of sweat gathered on his furrowed brow. For once, the smug veneer had cracked to reveal the fissures of doubt gnawing beneath. Ashley was a study in affected nonchalance, idly buffing her nails as if this legal showdown was merely an inconvenient hiccup delaying her next Instagram selfie session. I met their subtle provocations with an impassive mask, allowing the weight of their impatience to escalate the slow drip of unease. Finally, Jenkins cleared his throat and slid an official-looking dossier onto the table's polished surface. "If we could attend to the matter at hand." He lifted his gaze to Jane, who was practically vibrating with accusatory zeal. "This is outrageous!" She sliced the stale air with a bony finger. "That woman has hoodwinked you into some kind of illegitimate inheritance claim using God knows what lies about my poor Stan's mental faculties." Mark opened his mouth, but she barreled forward with the force of an avalanche. "We have documentation proving our legal standing as next of kin. Whatever schemes she's concocted, they won't stand up to." "Madam," Jenkins' mild tone nonetheless carried an adamantine edge, "if you'll permit me." He withdrew a sheaf of papers, placing them squarely before Jane's mottled glare. "These are the legal adoption papers signed and notarized by your late husband over a year ago. They clearly state his intentions to establish Miss Turner as his legal heir and beneficiary." You could have heard a pin drop in the ringing silence. Jane's mouth worked furiously, but only garbled stammers emerged. Across the table, understanding bloomed like a cesspool on Ashley's face as she gaped at the documents in revulsion. "No." The whisper was a strained rasp of disbelief. "That crazy old bat couldn't have." Jane slammed her fist on the table with a meaty thump, sending a litter of pens skittering. "It's a forgery. Everything she's done since worming her way into our lives has been a ploy to swindle my family's rightful inheritance." With a weary sigh, Jenkins produced another folder, extracting a handwritten letter that he slid towards Mark's ashen countenance. I regret this letter was necessary, but given your, shall we say, troubled family dynamics, your father insisted on making his wishes explicit and legally binding. The lawyer's gaze flicked to the apoplectic Jane. He knew there would be unpleasantness. As if in a trance, Mark's hand slid the correspondence closer, his eyes devouring each looping scrawl of his father's unmistakable penmanship. I could practically see the ground crumbling from beneath him, eroding every plank in the platform he'd so meticulously constructed around his hollow existence. It can't be, he rasped, anguish twisting his features. Jane snatched the letter with clawed fingers, gulping furiously as the damning text sank its hooks. A ghastly shade of puce crept up her jowls as the true extent of the reckoning became apparent. "You vicious little harlot!" She caterwauled the words in a glass-shattering screech, spittle flying. "You conniving gold-digging witch! I'll see you destitute on the streets before—" Her scream was severed by a violent coughing spasm that racked her frail frame. Jenkins calmly proffered a glass of water, which she swatted away with disdainful fury, only to crumple into a pathetic wheezing heap. The inheritance. Ashley's soft murmur was a blade in the unnerved silence. All those plans, all that money, gone. She turned her gaze to me, naked hatred scorching like twin blowtorches. "You hateful bee. That's quite enough." Jenkins rose smoothly, his tone hardening like carbon under compression. "Miss Turner's legal position as primary beneficiary of the Turner estate is incontrovertible. I suggest you come to terms with that fact and avoid further unpleasantness." The dagger of his stare leveled on Jane, still drowning in her anguish and rage. I held that malignant glare, allowing a fleeting glimmer of vengeance to glint in my irises. It was a meager victory, the opening salvo in a war that still loomed before me. But by God, I would savor it. This was just the beginning of my long-overdue retribution. The Turner clan's reckoning had only begun to unfurl. The weeks following that fateful meeting passed in a blur. Jane's mewling pleas for leniency fell on deaf ears as I steadfastly severed every slimy tendril still binding me to their toxic orbit. "Sarah, please?" Mark's voice had taken on a plaintive, haunted timbre as the reality of his situation congealed into inescapable truth. "We can still work something out, for old time's sake." I fixed him with a level stare, allowing the memory of every slight, every callous disregard for my humanity to galvanize my resolve. "Old times are precisely why there's no going back, Mark. You revealed your true self long ago. I'm just honoring that reality." His shoulders slumped in naked defeat as I turned and walked away without a backward glance. Any residual embers of affection had long since turned to ash on the pyre of their betrayal. Ashley proved equally obstinate in her desperation, resorting to the only arsenal she knew, petulant tantrum and hollow manipulation. "You have to help us," she'd wail into the phone, her words slurring from whatever substances she'd been abusing to dull the pain of facing consequences. "We're going to lose everything. The house, Mom's stupid little shop, everything." I'd remain impassive, allowing the silence to underscore her spoiled pleas until she'd erupt in a torrent of profanity and slammed the receiver into oblivion. Let the brat drown in the miasma of her own making. I'd sung that siren song too many times to capitulate. Only Jane's fall from delusional grace carried any flicker of satisfaction amidst the morass. Once a vision of coiffed entitlement, her threadbare existence now consisted of a grim rotation of court appearances, creditor houndings, and desperate schemes to forestall the terminal diagnosis of poverty. "You don't know what you're doing to this family." She'd rage fruitlessly whenever our paths briefly merged. "Once the money runs out, you'll have destroyed us. Is that what you want, you miserable wretch?" I'd simply gaze at her impassively until her tantrum momentum burned itself out, leaving her haggard and panting on the cold reality of her own poor life choices. It took months, but slowly the tumorous mass of their financial ruin metastasized. The estate dwindled to a parody through reckless borrowing, till even the rambling house I'd endured so much misery within was repossessed. The day the moving vans rolled up to dispossess them of the roof over their heads, I felt nothing. No elation, no pity, no scintilla of regret, just emptiness. Through the plate-glass window, I observed Jane's waxen pallor as the last vestiges of their tawdry legacy were boxed and hauled to parts unknown. Beside her, Ashley openly wept, huge, gulping sobs of the perpetually indulged. If I squinted, I could almost discern the faintest shimmer of a smile haunting Mark's hollow features. Some tiny fragment of his soul had welcomed this karmic absolution, this cleansing gale scouring the rot from his cloistered existence. As the trucks rumbled away, belching diesel exhaust, I allowed a fleeting reverie, Stan gazing down with a craggy half-grin and an approving nod for the protégé who'd carried his final sacred trust to its inexorable conclusion. The sun dipped low, banishing the departing caravan of change in ruddy brilliance. A new era beckoned on the molten horizon, and I turned to greet it with a lightness I'd never permitted myself in this waking purgatory. In the distance, a solitary bird issued a soaring, hopeful cry of liberation. Or perhaps it was merely the rusty gate of my personal jail finally swinging wide. The crisp autumn breeze carried the faint tang of wood smoke as I pulled into the parking lot of Riverside Rehabilitation Center. My pulse quickened with a mixture of reverence and determination. This hallowed ground represented so much of what I'd sacrificed, but also the promise of a new beginning. As I strode through the gleaming lobby, well-wishers and former colleagues emerged like a receiving line of ghosts. Polite smiles and handshakes blurred in a kaleidoscope of vague familiarity, until finally, mercifully, I found myself ensconced in the hushed sanctuary of my new office. The diplomas and certifications arrayed on the walls seemed to gaze upon me with mute approval. Reverentially, I traced the raised lettering of my physical therapy credentials, hard-won talismans that had been denied their full potential for far too long. A gentle rap forestalled any more introspection. Marcy, the center's merrily plump administrator, poked her head through the door with a warm smile. "All settled in and ready to get cracking, I see. Wonderful to have you back on the team, Sarah." I returned her smile, the first genuine one to grace my lips in recent memory. "It's great to be back home where I belong, Marcy, though I can't promise there won't be some adjustments." She gave me an appraising look, eyes twinkling with humor. "I have it on good authority. Those famous Turner stubbornness genes have been passed along to the next rightful heir." A hearty chuckle escaped before I could stifle it. How strange and wondrous to experience such uncomplicated camaraderie again, without the lingering stain of bitterness souring every human interaction. As Marcy's ample form retreated, I settled into the supple leather chair and allowed my gaze to roam the empty office that would soon become the launchpad for my own personal renaissance. After years treading the threshing floor of misery and despair, I now commanded the territory of my own redemption. The hours melted away in a flurry of unpacking, form filing, and preparation for the imminent influx of new patients. With each passing minute, I felt the weighty shackles of my imposed identity steadily loosening their rusted grip. Sarah Turner, beleaguered ex-wife and victim. Those ashes had fueled the fire that would give rise to the radiant, self-actualized phoenix emerging from the cindered residue of oppression. I straightened the simple nameplate centering my new desk, permitting a sense of hard-won pride. The low December sun bathed the room in a warm, rosy glow as the day's final appointment wrapped up. I lingered for a few stolen moments, breathing in the atmosphere of freedom and purpose that still carried a heady novelty. A kernel of wistfulness tugged at the corners of my heart as I traced the names and numbers meticulously scrawled in the logbook, each one representing a battered psyche or broken body yearning to be made whole again. The whir of tiny wheels preceded Ruthie, the center's endearingly chatty custodian, as she trundled her cart full of cleaning supplies through the doorway. "You're still here, honey?" she asked with a sunny smile. "Figured you'd be halfway to that fancy new condo you're moving into by now. With all the celebrating, I bet you've got planned." I chuckled at her irrepressible assumptions. "Nothing too fancy, Ruthie. Just taking my first real deep breaths of freedom." The older woman's eyes crinkled in empathy as she nodded. "Ain't no better feeling in this world, sweetie. You just keep on breathing that good air and letting the light shine on that pretty face again." As she bustled onward in a wake of lemon-fresh fragrance, I allowed those simple words of hard-won wisdom to permeate my very core. For so long, the veil of toxicity had obscured the path stretching forth, its twists and turns obscured in murky vapor. Now that fog had parted to reveal a shimmering vista, its horizons rippling with infinite permutations of potential redemption. My fingers tightened around the leather-bound datebook, a fierce sense of clarity washing over me. No more hesitation or existential pondering, no more cowering in shadowed corners. This was my life's chronicle. And from this chapter forward, its pages would blaze with the brilliance of 1,000 conquering suns.
A husband who has neglected his family because of his work. That day, he was away from home on a company trip. I was at an amusement park at the request of my daughter, who was lonely. I witnessed a shocking scene at the amusement park. What? What is my husband doing here? I approached him as he was leaving and spoke to him from behind in a deliberately cheerful voice. Sounds like a fun company trip, doesn't it? My name is Nadia, 38 years old, a working housewife raising a 9-year-old daughter, Tiffany. I met my husband, Simon, at a blind date when I was single. After 2 years of dating, he proposed, and we got married. Soon after, I was pregnant with our daughter. After 11 years of marriage, it was gradually cooling down. Simon had recently received a promotion at his company, and his days were quite busy. He comes home late on weekdays and works on weekends and holidays. Sometimes he even stays overnight at the office. Even when he is home sometimes, he spends the entire time staring at his computer or cell phone. Conversations between us gradually declined, and our daughter, Tiffany, began to act distant from her father. If this situation continued, our family would fall apart. With this sense of crisis, I complained to Simon when he came home late. Hey, can't you stay home a little longer? I want you to spend more time with Tiffany. My husband's expression turned to annoyance.
I told you I'm busy with work, didn't I?
But I'm sure Tiffany misses you too. You're her father, aren't you?
Why don't you take care of Tiffany? Don't give me any more trouble.
Simon went off to his bedroom without taking me seriously. I was left alone with my head in my hands, wondering what to do. Then Tiffany drew a picture of our family at school. Tiffany and I holding hands in the middle, and in the corner is a small drawing of what appears to be my husband. Tiffany, why is Daddy so small? Because he's not always at home. I don't even remember what he looks like anymore. Tiffany tells me awkwardly. We can't go on like this. We have to get our family back together. I looked at Tiffany's picture and made up my mind to do so. I waited for Simon, who came home late that day. Hey, Simon, do you remember what day is next Saturday?
Huh? The week after next? What's that?
What is that? It's Tiffany's 9th birthday.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Of course, I remember though, right?
Simon tells me with an embarrassed look on his face that he probably forgot about it. It's just Saturday and Sunday. Let's go on a trip to celebrate Tiffany's birthday that day.
Huh? A trip?
Yes. Let's take Tiffany to the aquarium she's always wanted to go to. It's her birthday after all. My husband pondered something for a while, and then sighed as if he had given up on the idea.
All right. I'll go with you on that day.
Really? That's a promise. Don't ever make any plans. Simon nodded at me. I hope this trip will bring us back together as a family. That's what I thought. The next day, when I told Tiffany about our travel plans, her face lit up. A trip? Dad can go with us? Yes, he's coming with us. Are you happy? Yes, I'm so excited. I'm going to hold hands with Mom and Dad at the aquarium. Tiffany must have been feeling lonely for some reason. She was so happy to hear that her father will be with her. I smiled as I gazed at her happy face. Then came the day of the trip. Simon woke up in the morning, looked at his cell phone, and had an impatient look on his face. As we were getting ready to leave, he said to us,
I have to go to work today, so you two go on that trip.
What? What are you talking about? I looked at Tiffany impatiently. She looks like she's about to burst into tears. You must feel sorry for Tiffany. I asked you not to make plans today.
I can't cancel work. I don't have a choice, do I? I'm gonna go now.
After getting dressed, Simon didn't even listen to Tiffany's attempts to say anything. He quickly left the house. In the end, it was just me and Tiffany on the trip. Tiffany didn't talk much and didn't go to the aquarium, which she was looking forward to. I could see that Tiffany had become disappointed in her father. Instead of bringing us back together as a family, this trip only made the gap between us even wider. I sighed to myself. When we got back from the trip, I waited until Tiffany had gone to bed and questioned Simon. But he made excuses like,
I have no choice. I'm trying to support you guys.
And finally he got mad at me. After that, my husband was away from home every day. I spent more time with Tiffany, but my daughter acted as if she no longer had a father. I knew I had to do something. I thought to myself, I'd like to spend the next 3 weekends with the 3 of us. We could just stay at home or go shopping. Anyway, I thought that spending time with the 3 of us would make the current situation a little better. So, when Simon came home late at night, I made a serious appeal to him. Hey, Simon, you have to make up for what you did the other night. You're really going to ruin Tiffany's trusting you, and of course, my trusting you too.
You're overreacting.
You have the next 3 weekends, right? One of those days, you have to be with us this time. If you can't do that, then I'm afraid this family is finished.
Huh? Oh, I can't. I'm going on a company trip the next 3 weekends.
Huh? A company trip? I've never heard such a thing before.
It started this year. Anyway, I can't make the next weekend either. Well then, that's that.
Simon said that and went off to take a bath. I was left thinking. I thought that it might not be possible for me and Simon to be a family anymore. As the 3-day weekend was approaching, my husband made a rare appearance and said to me,
Hey, how are you guys doing on your 3-day weekend?
I don't know. Maybe I'll take Tiffany and go back to my parents' house.
Oh, well, have a safe trip.
Simon looked somewhat happy. I wondered why he was so happy and said, have fun on your trip, as if he was being sarcastic. The first day of the 3-day weekend arrived. How do you feel about going to Grandma and Grandpa's house? I asked Tiffany, and she said, Yes, I'd love to, but I have one favor to ask. What's that? I'd like to go to an amusement park with you sometime soon, Mommy. I heard your friend had a great time there. I hugged Tiffany as she fidgeted. Of course I want to go to the amusement park with you. Can we go during the holidays already? What? Can we? We can always go to Grandpa's house some other time. Let's enjoy the amusement park together. Thus, Tiffany and I decided to go to the amusement park on the following Sunday. The day of our outing, Tiffany and I headed to an amusement park a short distance away. Tiffany's excitement was high the whole time we were there, and she was enjoying the attractions one after another. I rode along with her and sometimes watched from afar as we enjoyed our time together. Eventually, Tiffany said she wanted to ride a roller coaster, but I'm not very good at roller coasters, so I decided to wait nearby. Then I looked around and saw an unbelievable sight. What? Simon, what are you doing here? A young woman and a boy of about 3 years old were holding hands next to my husband. Clearly not the atmosphere of a company trip. It was a happy father and son, no matter how you look at it. At this moment, I knew what was going on. Simon had cheated on me, betraying us, and had an illegitimate child. Something snapped in my head. So that's what it was. Then, I have an idea. I approached them as they were moving away and spoke to them from behind in a deliberately cheerful voice. Sounds like a fun company trip. Simon turned around, apparently realizing it was my voice, and his face turned pale.
Nadia? Why are you here?
A woman and a boy approached me while I was silently staring at Simon. Simon? Is this... What do you mean by company trip? Hey, Dad, are these your friends? Simon turned even paler and clammed up. By the looks of it, they don't know he has another family. Not wanting to cause trouble in front of the little boy, I gave my contact information to the woman with whom he was having an affair with. I whispered in her ear, I am his wife. I'm going to walk away today, so please make sure you call me back. The woman's eyes widened as she looked at Simon and me, and then she nodded with a pale face. I went home early with Tiffany and waited for my husband to get home. Simon came home late at night. I asked him in a low voice, Now shall I ask you to tell me everything that happened today? Then Simon started blurting out a story as if he had given up on the idea. About 4 years ago, he registered on a matching app, lied about being single. Then he met Diana, with whom he was having an affair. A short time after they started dating, Diana became pregnant and wanted to have the baby. He took advantage of the fact that Diana was estranged from her parents. He lied to Diana that he could not marry her because he had debts. He started to live a double life as he was married to her. When I found out everything, I was so shocked that I couldn't speak for a while. How could you betray us? How will you pay for this? I glared at him and he shuddered and apologized.
Oh, that woman is just a game. I only love you and Tiffany. I'm going to settle up the relationship. Just give me some time.
Simon looked at me for a while and I muttered to myself, Well, okay.
You forgive me? Thank you, Nadia.
Simon's eyes lit up and I smiled at him. Yes, why don't you go take a bath for now?
Okay, I will. Nadia, thank you so much.
Simon heads for the bathroom. I watched him and made a phone call. Eventually, my husband came out of the bath in a good mood and his face turned pale again. He was pale again because he saw me and Diana, the woman he was having an affair with, standing side by side at the same time.
Diana, what are you doing here? Nadia, what in the world is going on?
I replied with a smirk. Before you came back, I got a call from Diana. She wanted the three of us to have a discussion. Here's what Diana and I had discussed beforehand. She was shocked to find out that Simon had a family. Although it was her fault for even having a child, she didn't know how to apologize. Simon says he wants to divorce me and be with her, but she's going to step aside. She wanted to make amends from now on. As Diana tearfully pleaded, I thought to myself, she's also a victim of Simon's deception. So together we came up with a plan to give Simon a good beating. Simon, I just heard from your wife that you told her you were only staying with me for fun. That's the opposite of what you said to me. Diana questioned him, but he just shrugged and moped. I sighed heavily. He was just going to say whatever was convenient for both of us anyway. And you were just going to keep the relationship going. I know all about it.
Well, that's...
Why don't you say something? I yelled at him, and Simon answered in a voice that sounded as if he was about to cry.
Because I really love you both. I don't want to let go of either of you.
Huh, what a convenient thing to say. Simon's body trembled.
Can't we just stay in our current relationship? We can all live together, you know? Then everyone would be happy, right?
I was too dumbfounded to say anything, but Diana started talking. Simon, I asked your wife where you really work. AB Systems, you said? You've been lying to me about it all along, haven't you?
Diana, that's...
Simon was about to make an excuse, but she stopped him right away. You know Pine Industries, right?
That's one of our major clients. But what does that have to do with anything right now?
Simon looked puzzled, but Diana continued indifferently. I knew it. AB Systems is the company name my father told me about.
Your father?
Yeah, when I said I'm estranged from my parents, and I did mean it, They love me too much, and they're overprotective, so I ran away from them. My father is the president of Pine Industries.
What? President?
I just called him for the first time in years. I told him that a married man named Simon Brown from AB Systems had tricked me into having a baby. He was furious.
Huh?
Simon was getting paler and paler, and he suddenly started to panic. But Diana continued without hesitation. My father told Whitmore Builders what happened, and they're going to stop doing business with AB Systems. By the end of the week, your company will be in an uproar.
Hey, if that happens, I'll lose my job.
I don't give a damn about that. I'm leaving you, but I'm still going to get my child support payments, so get ready. Diana yelled at Simon, startling him.
What? Diana, are you breaking up with me?
What's the matter with you now? You tricked me into having an affair with you. There's no way I'm going to continue our relationship. Don't you dare make fun of me. Diana silenced him, and Simon turned to me.
Nadia, Diana's side has been cleared up, so Tiffany and us can go back to our original happy family. That's better, isn't it?
Simon was coming closer and closer to me, but I shoved him away as hard as I could. You've got to be kidding me.
Nadia!
I'm divorcing a man like you. I'm getting custody. I'm demanding alimony and child support too, so make sure you pay up.
Hey, you're leaving me too?
Simon's eyes widened, but I glared at him and yelled, You keep betraying me and Tiffany and even using Diana. I don't ever want to see your scum face again. Pay what you owe and get the hell out of here. Diana and I looked down at Simon with our arms crossed. I made him get out of the house after he had gotten completely weak. After that, my divorce from Simon was finalized. He cried that he couldn't pay me alimony. I threatened to take him to court, and he immediately transferred the money to me. He said he would pay child support monthly from now on. Diana's father hired a lawyer, and Simon paid alimony to her as well. That and child support payments for their child. Diana's father got around to it, and Simon was fired from his job. Simon was in debt to pay me and Diana. He's now living in a shabby apartment working day and night. He's asked me to reduce the amount of child support each of us is paying, but neither Diana nor I are willing to compromise in any way. I hope he can live with his sins from now on. After that, Tiffany and I moved into a new house, and we are living a peaceful life. Tiffany seems to be okay with her father being gone. She says she would rather be with her mom. Diana has gone back to her parents to raise her kid. We don't see each other, but we email each other once in a while. I'm going to put my daughter's happiness first and try to lead a brighter life.
Thank you so much for your invitation. To my acknowledgement, my mother-in-law gave me an unexpected reply. You're not coming with us. You annoy me. Got it? I wondered what made her treat me in this way. She didn't see me as a part of her family. Was it the job I had that bothered her so much? I felt like her words punched me in the face, and was too shocked to say anything back. I had managed to endure her abuses so far, but I wasn't gonna let her get away with this one. My name is Tracy. I've been working at quite a big company. The job itself is nothing fancy. But I'm surrounded by many good colleagues, including my boss. It's a nice environment that keeps me working here. My job gets quite hectic during peak season, but I never felt stressed because my colleagues and I have a good support system, and we work hard as a team. I guess not having a work relationship issue helps me a lot too. My parents have always worried about me working too much. The typical nagging of, "When do you plan to get married?" I always give them the same nonchalant answer. I still don't feel like it, and it's better not to rush into it. They normally just sigh and shake their heads at me. My life changed when my company threw a big party. I had never felt comfortable in a social setting, but I forced myself to join as it was a part of my job. The dinner was amazing, but I felt dizzy in the crowded hall, so I went out to a balcony to catch a fresh air. I was enjoying the night breeze when I heard a man's voice. It took me a while to realize that someone was speaking to me. "Oh, I'm sorry, I was in my own world." The guy standing across from me looked plain but friendly. "Are you antisocial?" His blunt question made it easier for me to be honest. "Yeah, I prefer working," I replied with a wry smile, to which he answered shyly, "Me too. I thought I was gonna be the only unsocial one here." He seemed to relax a bit and start asking me questions. His name was John, and we spoke about our work and our interest in traveling and movies. He was really into films and even knew a lot about old Hollywood. I prefer watching a movie at home than going out with a bunch of people. "Me too." He sounded a bit enthusiastic about my comment, and he immediately said, "Whoops, I haven't met anyone I can really talk to about all this, so I got a bit too excited." He seemed embarrassed. I found him cute, and we continued our conversation alone on the balcony. We exchanged our numbers at the end of the night. I normally didn't give my number easily to guys except at work, but he was different, in the sense that he made me feel relaxed while talking to him. "Are you dating someone now?" I froze to the out-of-the-blue question of Anne one day at work. She continued without care. "Because you start wearing cute outfits to the office, I assume you are meeting someone special after work." I wasn't certain what she meant by dating. "Not sure if we are dating, but we have common interest, and we watch movies or have dinner together. That's all." She looked at me puzzled and then rolled her eyes. "That is called dating." I guess she could read my mind, going, "Wow, I've been dating." She slapped her forehead and chuckled. "I'm happy that you're happy." I had been focusing on my job so much for a long time that my dating monitor must have shut down. Also, it just felt so natural to be with him, so I didn't even think about our status. John and I had smooth sailing. It wasn't a passionate romance like in Hollywood movies, but more laid back, and we had a peaceful time together. Eventually, we got engaged. Although my work required a lot of me at times, he never complained about it. My colleagues were happy for me, and glad to hear that I would be working as usual after my marriage. We started planning our wedding, and invited our friends as well as all of our colleagues. John's parents had a quiet manner just like him. His dad was courteous and a man of few words. His mom had a demeanor of dependability without being noisy. When we had dinner to introduce each other's family, it wasn't like our parents hit it up, but it was more like a friendly gathering. However, my mom had a look of worry later that night. When I asked her what was wrong, she said, "You might have a problem with John's mom later on. But John is a reliable guy, so I hope he can stand it between." John's mom was well-mannered, but didn't look bitchy. I shrugged off my mom's comment at that time. Later on, I came to realize how on point my mom was about her. Our wedding and honeymoon were both amazing. I always wanted to go to Rome ever since I watched Rome on Holiday. We weren't allowed to sit or eat anything at the Spanish Steps where Audrey Hepburn ate gelato, but I was ecstatic just climbing up the stairs. Even though we intentionally went there during off-season, there were still tons of tourists trying to take pictures. After we returned home, and just when we felt like we settled down, My work started becoming busier. I had already told John's parents that it normally got overloaded with work before and during long holidays, but it was particularly busy that Christmas season, and I didn't think I could take any days off. John and I went to visit his parents, and I informed them that I would miss the first Christmas with them. John's dad said,
"We don't really have a big celebration anyway, so don't worry about it. Just come and see us when things settle down."
John's mom too. I agree with him, but she looked like she had more to say. When I was helping her in the kitchen, my instinct came true. She still had a backward idea and thought women should stay at home and take care of the housework. When John came into the kitchen to help, "Cooking is a woman's work. Go relax in the living room," she shushed him away. Of course, I wasn't allowed to relax. I told myself it was still better than getting all the responsibility dumped on my shoulders. I never imagined a future where I got bullied by my mother-in-law. She sighed deliberately while cutting carrots. I was obliged to ask, "What's wrong?" She made a low voice, not to let John and his dad hear her. "You can't take Christmas off, can't you? It's disappointing and quite rude. I'm sure my husband is actually upset," she mumbled. I was astounded seeing her like that for the first time. It was totally unexpected for me. As she kept chopping carrots, she continued with her lecture. "Why didn't you quit such a job when you got married? I hope you're not planning to work for long." I was fidgety and said, I haven't decided yet. John and I discussed and both of us planned to work for a while." I stumbled. She stared at me displeasingly. "You don't look like a successful career woman. Isn't it rather a good riddance for your company if you quit?" What did she know about me? When my anger started boiling, she was already setting up a table for dinner. Her behavior was back to normal in front of the others. I was remembering the comment by my mom when she first met John's mom.
"What's the matter, honey?"
I was brought back to myself and started taking food to the dining room. My mother-in-law pretended to know nothing and said, "Are you tired from unfamiliar cooking? I suppose you are too busy with work to cook at home."
"Mom, even though she is busy, she cares about the well-being and usually cooks balanced meal. Don't tell me you're bullying her."
"Of course not. I'm just concerned about her." I was amazed by her quick change of her behavior. My father-in-law prompted,
"Let's eat."
And we started dinner. John and I left the next morning. I probably had a gloomy face, so John asked me,
"Are you okay?"
I quickly thought it was better not to mention anything. That may cause an issue with their good relationship. "It's nothing. I guess I'm a bit tired from work." I covered it up.
Sorry. You didn't get to relax much with my parents around on your days off."
I felt even worse to say anything when I saw his concerned face. I didn't want to drag him, a kind-hearted husband, into this. My in-laws and I were never living together nor close to each other, so I only had to deal with her once in a while. It was my wishful thinking. After the last visit, she started calling me once a week. She asked me about John or checked to see if I was slacking on housework. I tried to put not much meaning into her calls, but they eventually started to stress me out. I still wasn't able to say anything to John either. One day, I got a call from her again. As soon as I picked up the phone, she said, "My birthday is coming up next month." I totally forgot about it and said, "Yes, right. What would you like to do?" "I don't need you to celebrate my birthday." She quickly shut me down and kept speaking fast not to let me interrupt. My husband suggested going for a short family trip. Since I love taking a trip, the second of the word made me excited regardless of what she had said just a minute ago. But my little excitement was short-lived and easily taken away by her. Thank you for the invitation.
Are you kidding me?
She separated each word to make her comment more sarcastic. I guess you will be invited as it's a family trip. She sounded irritated. But you're not coming with us. You annoy me. Got it? As I was looking for a word, she continued. I want to go only with my family. There's no place for a daughter-in-law. Make up an excuse, blame it on your work, and just don't join us. I will let you organize a trip though. I finally had enough and let my anger flow. I see. Whatever you say. Watch how you speak to me. It sounded like she was screaming, but I hung up on her. As instructed by her email, I booked flights and a nice hotel for their trip. Of course, excluding me. On the early morning of the trip, I told John that I had to take care of an important thing at work and cancel my flight. He was very disappointed, but, well, what can you do if it's work? I will miss you. Let me know if there's anything. He was still sweet. I felt a little bad about this trip, which was to be my retaliation against my mother-in-law. Of course, I felt bad only for John. I did go to work as I said. I thought about going somewhere alone, but I figured that I would start thinking negatively the moment I had free time. It was actually better to keep myself busy at work. I had no time to wonder what John was doing. Besides, my assistant made a huge mistake on this day. Everyone, including me, was running around to fix the problem, and I didn't even have time to send a text to John. When we finally finished working, it was dusk outside. Phew! Well done, Tracy. It's so late. Is your husband okay? Yeah, I already told him I might be quite busy today. I was so relieved to finish that I was smiling broadly. Then I remembered to check my phone to see if there was any messages from John. There were several missed calls and text on my screen. They were supposed to come back the day after tomorrow. When I was reading my text, my phone suddenly vibrated. I ran out to the hallway and answered the phone. You need to explain this whole thing. What have you done? My mother-in-law screamed so loud that her voice must have been heard from inside the office. Calm down. Please lower your voice. I'm still at work. She didn't care and kept screaming hysterically. Anne poked her head out of the door, but as soon as she saw me, she sensed something and closed the door. How the hell do you know the GM of this hotel? My mother-in-law shouted. She explained frantically that when John told the front desk the number of guests was changed to 3 upon check-in, the staff told him it was originally booked for the 3. She was too late to interfere and was questioned by John and his dad. She eventually had to come clean about what she had done to me. You know, I told you I work in the travel industry. That hotel was going through a hard time at one point. I really liked the service and amazing scenery around it, so I helped with the marketing to attract young crowds. People started coming because it was great for social media photos and unique services. I know the GM since then. She was listening with heavy breathing. I could imagine her face looking like the possessed girl from The Exorcist. The GM asked us why we were having a family trip without you. You arranged all this, didn't you? I calmly answered the enraged mother-in-law. No way, it's peak season right now. I didn't think he had time for such a thing. I pretended to be innocent. The GM and I had a good relationship, so when I was at the hotel for work last time, I told him that I got married and my last name had changed. John's last name was unique, so the GM must have noticed. John must have heard his mom's yelling and came over. I heard his voice in the back, and then he took the phone from her.
I'm really sorry, honey. I had no idea what my mom was doing to you.
Don't worry, babe. I didn't tell you either.
I got scolded by the GM. He told me to take really good care of you and said it's rare to meet someone as compassionate as you. I felt like I was being scolded by your dad.
I laughed at his comment. The GM was about the same age as my dad. He also had a daughter who was married, so maybe he did take it personally.
I will see you tomorrow. We need to talk about this. Love you, Han.
We hung up the phone. After they came back, we had a family meeting at John's parents' house. My mother-in-law was really not interested in what I did for work, so she didn't even know that John's company was a subcontractor of mine. John was told by the GM that if he didn't take good care of me, the hotel was going to re-evaluate the contract with his company.
It will affect your performance review.
When the GM mentioned it, my mother-in-law finally realized that she interfered with her own son's success and had greatly regretted her action. It probably didn't have that much of an impact on his career, but she had no work experience of her own and totally believed it. She looks remorseful and shrunk a half size during the meeting.
I will never take a trip with you. I will only go with Tracy from now on.
To John's comment, she scurried to defend herself. Please forgive me. I will tell the GM I will never bully Tracy, so you will have no problem at... Before she could finish her sentence, John grimaced and cut her off.
You are so wrong. This has nothing to do with my work. If you can treat Tracy nicer, I will never speak to you again.
She was sobbing at his words.
I'm really disappointed to know you are such a terrible person.
Her husband condemned her. Then she took my hands in hers. I'm very sorry. Please forgive me. I will never do such horrible things. Honestly, I wasn't convinced by her words.
We will see from your action from now on. I've been too oblivious. I will keep my eyes on you now.
John said in an authoritative tone, and then he turned to face me.
I'm sorry again. I'm not gonna let her do whatever she wants from now on.
He held me tight in his arms.
I apologize too. It's unbelievable what she has done.
My father-in-law too gave me a warm hug. I was overwhelmed with a feeling of relief. Since then, my mother-in-law stopped criticizing my work and making a call just to tell me some sarcasm. All contact had to go through John, and no more complaints about when I could and couldn't visit. I even thought she started to respect my work. My father-in-law had never done chores at home, and he was told by John,
"You need to start helping mom with housework."
He was struggling with cooking, but he helped with cleaning and started to show more appreciation toward his wife. The atmosphere of the house became a little more joyful since then.
Did you worry that I was gonna take my mom's side?
When John asked me, I honestly told him that I didn't want to create a cause to break their relationship.
I'm glad we could turn the bad experience into a better family. Thank you, Han.
He gave me a kiss on my forehead. 3 months after the family trip, the 4 of us were staying at the same hotel. Glad to see that it's still popular, I happily commented to the GM.
It's because of you,
he said with a shy smile. My mother-in-law told him, I'm very sorry for the incident. I've been scolded by my family and I deeply regret it now. I apologize for making you worried. John has been a very good husband. He looked at us family wholeheartedly and said,
Tracy saved this hotel and me, so please take care of her.
He really sounded like my own dad. I realized then that I was valued by many people, and I felt grateful for that. The trip turned out to be better than I had imagined. I had been there numerous times for work, so I was like a local guide. I took my family to secret spots, and we were all excited like kids. It was the perks of this job and my efforts. My in-laws and I would keep a reasonable distance and a good relationship in the future.
My mill demanded it was my duty to pay off her debt as her dill when I told her I was single.
My name is Dawn. People say I'm eccentric, but I disagree. We are a family of 3, my husband, son, and me. My in-laws live in the main house on the same property. I'm an ordinary housewife. I got married to my husband 20 years ago. We met at work. He was already a senior manager when I joined. For a fresh graduate like me, he looked unapproachable. His image changed when we had an office party. I heard he was from an Irish background, so I thought he was a drinker, but I was wrong. When I went to pour wine into his glass, "Just pretend, but don't pour in, thank you," he shyly said with a red face from alcohol. Compared to his usually stoic face, "You are quite adorable," I blurted out. His eyes were wide open and his already red face flushed brighter. "Adorable? That's a first." He seemed extremely embarrassed. I fell for him at that moment. We became more familiar with each other in the office, and eventually, "Would you like to go out for dinner with me?" He asked me out. He was 30 years old at the time. It supposedly took tremendous courage for him to ask a 20-year-old. He cared about the 10 years age difference, but I didn't think much of it. On the contrary, I was happy to have a boyfriend who was mature and I could rely on. We got engaged after 2 years of dating. We first announced it to my parents, who lived 3 hours away by car. Then I was going to meet his parents for the first time. They had a huge house in an affluent neighborhood an hour away. "Wow, what a big house! You grew up here?" I was so excited to find out more about him. Seeing me animated, his mother chuckled. "Such a cute girl. Come inside." Wearing an elegant pink dress, she looked much younger than her age. My husband had already informed his parents. "I want you to meet my fiancé." Before we came, so they were in a merry mood. I quickly felt at home with them. "Have you decided on the venue?" his dad asked. "Not yet. We are planning to start looking around soon. We want to invite only close friends and family, and make a small wedding that we can cover with our own savings," he answered. His mother's face turned serious. "That's not acceptable. It's supposed to be once in a lifetime event. It's the occasion to invite as many people and celebrate together." To which my husband sighed heavily. More and more people are having a cozy wedding nowadays. Besides, we'd rather keep our savings for the future instead of spending all for the wedding. I don't care about the trend. I wouldn't want to attend such a boring wedding. His father intervened. "We shouldn't meddle with their plan. Let them do whatever they want." "I'm sorry about my wife, Dawn." I sensed a heaviness between the parents, so I cheerfully said, "No, not at all. It's all good." When my husband followed his father to the study, my mother-in-law mumbled, "How did an immature child like you seduce my son?" I was spaced out from exhaustion, so I thought I heard her wrong. Looking back, He was the first son of a bully. My husband explained about his mother afterward. She came from a prominent family that migrated to the US in the 18th. The family was faced with tragedies in the 19th and eventually dispersed, but she still carried the value from her upbringing. When I was talking to her, I was often reminded of it. Luxury goods are high quality. Saving money is miserable, she repeated. Every time I heard her favorite phrases that were different from my value, I was just amazed by her. Having an extravagant wedding was politely declined though. After our wedding, we moved in with my parents-in-law. Even though we were living on the same property, Joe and I had our own cottage behind the main house, so we were independent of them. I got pregnant 6 months after our wedding and quit my job right before I gave birth. I wanted to focus on my child. Joe had no problem with it and even said, "I'm gonna work harder now." After I had my son and stayed with him at home all day, I realized something. My father-in-law still worked, so it was normal for him to be out during the day. My mother-in-law, who never worked in her entire life, was also out, and I rarely saw her at home during the day. She normally dressed up and went out for lessons and lunch with friends. Sometimes she came by the cottage and dropped off designer brand gifts for my son and Joe. Around this time, she added, "I don't have enough allowance again this month, and don't tell my husband," to her favorite phrases. As for the presents, Joe had a specific taste, so even if it was from a nice brand, if he didn't like it, he never wore it. The baby clothes too. I didn't see a point in buying expensive ones, as my baby outgrew them fast. I almost told her to not bother splurging if she didn't have enough allowance. But I knew she would have gotten upset with me, so I kept quiet. Whenever she came over, she always asked me about my plan for the next days. My son wasn't even in preschool, and we mostly stayed at home every day. She knew it well and expected me to say I had no plan. Then she normally asked, "So can I ask you to clean my house? You have nothing to do, right?" I didn't have a valid excuse to decline, so I had to oblige. She asked me this once a week and always made me promise, "Don't tell my husband." Whenever I went to her house to clean, it was always dusty and messy. I used to mop up a corner of the living room first, and then set up a baby gate to put my son in. What am I, a maid? Maid. Sweep, wipe, and repeat. Sweep. My son and I sang, and when he looked bored, I let him watch TV. I was determined to clean the house spotless. When I was done, I had no energy to do anything else. My maid life as such continued for a little while. It came to an end thanks to Joe. One day, when he came back from work earlier than usual, he found my son and me in the main house. "Who do you think she is? A maid?" He scolded his mom. I was so happy to see him standing up for me that my frustration flew out the window. She learned her lesson and never asked me to clean again. Instead, she hired a professional cleaner to come regularly. I was astounded to see how adamant she was to do it herself. When my son started his preschool, I used my freedom to work part-time. My mother-in-law frowned and criticized me. "People think my son's not making enough money, and your poor son will have a lack of parental affection." I normally didn't argue with her, but for this one, Joe makes enough money. It's my choice to work. I want my son to see that his mom is capable of multitasking. She still looked displeased and mumbled, "The job of a mother is to be pretty and affectionate." I shrugged her off. I put effort into my part-time job and increased my work hours according to my growing son's schedule. Seeing me hard at work, Joe and my son started to share housework with me. I was very thankful to them. My son eventually became high school senior and studied hard to get a scholarship to the university he wanted to go to. I informed my parents and in-laws about his achievement. Just when I was relieved and melancholic about my son, my mother-in-law showed up unannounced. "What a grandson I have, a scholarship. He's becoming an excellent man like his father." "Thank you very much. We are so proud of him." I invited her to sit in the living room and then sensed something strange. She became to congratulate him, but she didn't bring any gifts. She liked to show off, so she secretly continued to bring expensive sweets and clothes even after the cleaning incident. It was very weird for her to come empty-handed for such a big celebratory event as this. She asked, "Where are he and Joe?" "School and work. It's a weekday." "All right, you're alone today." I couldn't figure out where she was going with the conversation. Then she suddenly made a serious expression. "You know that endowment life insurance you've been paying for the education. You said it's coming to the end of term, right?" "That's right." "Can I borrow that money in secret? My husband's salary has gone down recently because of the recession. I don't have enough for my recital, and also my friends and I have been planning a trip. Just a small amount like $5,000. $5,000? I was flabbergasted by the nonchalant way she mentioned the amount. "Of course not. I can't let you borrow such a big amount." "Well then, a couple of thousand would do. I heard the policy gives you like $100,000. It's not a lottery. What Joe and I saved is coming back. But there's also a scholarship. You should let him pay for his own education anyway. I urgently need that money. I should be the priority." She was being illogical and wasn't taking no for an answer. I unusually became upset with her and firmly said, "Absolutely not." I apparently made her grumpy. "Fine." She stood up and grimaced at me. "You're such a heartless, stingy person. Your son raised by such a mother won't have a good future." I couldn't calm down even after she left. So I opened a can of beer while cooking dinner. Even though she didn't have the money, she couldn't stop splurging. I always knew she was trouble, but I tolerated her to keep a good relationship. I had been telling myself that she had a different upbringing, but she ignited my anger this time. Just because her selfish request was declined, she made a ridiculous remark about my son. I told Joe what his mom said to me word for word after my son retreated to his room that night. "I've been keeping it from you, but I lent her money before and she hasn't paid it back yet." "Wait, you too?" It became clear that both of us had a small amount of money owed. Since we lived so close to the parents, we didn't want to create an awkward atmosphere by refusing her. I guess she knew and took advantage. I can't let it go this time. Me neither. I'm fed up with her. We felt bad for Joe's father, but we agreed on moving out of the cottage. "Hey, hon, there's something I really want to do before we move." I proposed a plan to retaliate against her. I was going to make her regret insulting not only me but my son as well. My determination was burning. I prepared the necessary evidence in a month. After sharing them with Joe and my son, I finally started my plan rolling. It was the first weekend of July. I aimed my visit to coincide with dinner time, so both my mother and father-in-law would be at home. Joe and I told them we had an important thing to discuss. As soon as we sat down in their living room, Joe pretended to be remorseful. Dawn made a mistake and opened some of your mail. They were wrongly put in our post. We are very sorry. I produced 5 envelopes and a folded paper on a coffee table. Oh no, my mother-in-law gasped. The envelopes were from credit card companies and IRS. I selected ones that said important and urgent from the mail I had collected in a month. Our mailboxes stood next to each other, so the mailman sometimes mixed up. When he saw me cleaning the yard, he didn't hesitate to pass me 2 bundles. It was easy to differentiate mail related to her financial issues from seeing them for so long. Hence, I picked the top 5 for this occasion. Oh my God, you haven't been paying all of this? My father-in-law frowned at his wife. As I expected, he had no idea how much he has been squandering. She stuttered. It just slipped my mind, that's all. I'll pay them tomorrow. She made a lame excuse and hurriedly collected the envelopes. As Joe and I were leaving, I pretended to remember something and said, "Oh yeah, there were a few with immediate deadlines. I'm very sorry for not coming sooner." I gave a big smile to my mother-in-law, who was grimacing at me from behind her husband. 2 weeks later, she purposely came over when Joe and my son were out. I was expecting her visit, so I greeted her as usual and let her in. As soon as she walked into the living room, "Please do me a favor. Can you make a payment for these on my behalf? You know, I'm quite busy and can't make it to the bank on time." She pulled out the bills in front of me. Those were taxes for a property and a car, and credit card bill for online shopping. The number of bills was, for sure, more than when I showed to her and her husband. "You don't need to go to the bank, you know. I'll show you how to pay with online banking." I suggested light-heartedly for my first retaliation, and then added more. "Also, you've shopped with my credit card, haven't you? I saw a charge I wasn't aware of on my statement. I'd never bought anything from Saks Fifth Avenue online. Besides, nothing arrived from them but the charge." I thought it was skimming, but then I remembered she loved the store. She bought it with my card and gifted it to herself. It was a fraud. She was shrewd when it came to money, but her wrongdoing was to be caught sooner or later. "I have no idea what you're talking about. Do you have proof?" "I can call customer service and find out what you bought. If the same item is in your house, that's proof, isn't it?" I smirked. She choked, but then, "Fine, I'll pay you back. But these are more urgent. The taxes must be paid now. We are family. We support each other, right?" "Family?" I exclaimed in a deliberated manner. "I'm almost single. I'm not really your family." "What do you mean?" I put on a sullen face and explained to her in a gloomy tone. "Joe and I have been fighting about our finance. He's very upset with me about the money I lent to you, thinking I splurged. But I can't tell him the truth or cover it with my part-time salary. Our relationship deteriorated and we are separated now. We are filing for a divorce. To which she became angry. You never consulted with me. I knew a younger but no common sense wife would be nothing but trouble. She left fuming. But she didn't give up and kept bothering me. Using the same "we are not a family" excuse, I continued to refuse her, who demanded money like she was above me for whatever reason. Eventually, it turned August, and I moved out of the cottage alone. My son moved to another state to attend university in September, and then Joe moved out immediately after. The three of us had all gone away from the in-laws. I heard they had a serious stroke after we left. My father-in-law told me the whole story. Dawn told me the reason she and Joe are divorcing is that you owed them money. You stole her credit card and her pay of your shopping. Do you even understand the seriousness of what you did? She became outraged by his accusation and snapped back. Not at all. She was my daughter-in-law and living in the cottage for free. I expected her to cover for me. I only bought some cosmetics and supplements anyway. It was supposed to be our secret, but I can't believe she told you. Joe is right to divorce her. I know now. You're a malicious woman. I want a divorce. I don't need such a nasty wife for the rest of my life. Let me check all our finance. Well, he went through the file she had kept and found their inactive investment funds with zero balance. All of her credit cards were maxed out, and she hadn't been paying, or just the minimum if she had. He couldn't believe the level of her atrocity. I kind of predicted the situation, even though he had a managing director title at work. He was working at an ordinary company, and I didn't think his salary could support her splurge. I assumed he had a big loan or touching the money she wasn't supposed to, or both. When she had an eye on my son's educational savings, I figured she was in critical financial situation. I was right. My father-in-law sold the property and paid off her debt in the end. He was able to divorce her without alimony or distribution of property. However, knowing she had never worked in her life, she didn't feel comfortable throwing her out without anything. So he gave her $10,000 to start over. Joe thought his dad was too easy on her, but $10,000 must have been gone in no time if she had no income. She despised working, but loved showing off and buying expensive gifts for people. She would be penniless sooner or later and be on the street. She deserved it. As for me, I'm currently enjoying life in a new apartment along with Joe. Divorce was a deceit. To make it more real for mother-in-law, I moved out alone at first, but moved into a new place Joe and I bought. It was a good timing to coincide with my son going away for his university, so we put a down payment with our savings and bought a newly built apartment. Our new life is amazing. I don't have to be a maid and clean my mother-in-law's house, or be asked to pay for a mysterious facial massage tool she bought. Having no bothersome relationship, Joe and I enjoy our second honeymoon period. We don't want to deceive Joe's dad, so we've told him about our plan. It's only the mother-in-law who is made to believe. We have no intention of telling her the truth or where we live. We honestly want nothing to do with her for the rest of our lives. After selling the house, my father-in-law lives in a small apartment. He's looking to move closer to us. He has been nothing but kind to me, and we never had any problems, so I'm looking forward to having him nearby. We are planning to visit our son over the next long weekend. I'm surrounded by my favorite people and enjoying my life to the fullest. It's my best time by far.
When submitting the marriage registration form, I heard my fiancé's mom say, "I finally got my servant."
I checked the marriage registration form and submitted it to a clerk together with my fiancé Chris. The clerk said, "Well, let me check it for you," and received it. While waiting, Chris walked to his family in a good mood. With him, I could build a happy family and get along well with his family. Just when I was thinking that, I heard worrisome words in the conversation between Chris and his family. It took a long time. Once they submit the marriage registration form, she won't be able to escape from us easily. I finally got my servant. I won't have to work now either. Chris, you did really well. From now on, we can live luxuriously. Yes, I want a brown bag. I want golf clubs. I'll even let her do all the housework. We can live gracefully from now on. I couldn't believe what I just heard. What are these people talking about? As I froze in surprise, the clerk was opening her eyes wide. Apparently, she heard that too. Maybe Chris and his family were so happy that they didn't realize they were talking louder than they thought. The clerk looked at me and whispered, "There's no omission, but I'll give this back to you," and gently handed the marriage registration form back to me. I whispered, "Thank you so much," and put it in my bag. My name is Mary, 30-year-old office worker. I studied really hard to get into a high-level high school and university. Then I got a job at one of the most famous IT companies in the world, and I focused on producing results. Then I was promoted to section manager at the age of 30. The harder I worked, the more results I got, which is fun and fits my personality. But sometimes I feel lonely. It's been a long time since I had a boyfriend last time. And when I see my friends around me getting married or having babies and looking happy, I sometimes feel sad. I wonder if I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. Mary, what are you thinking about? My coworker Justin talked to me. Oh, hi Justin. Did I look like that? You look like you were having a problem. Oh, it's nothing. Thank you for worrying. Oh, okay. That's not good. Maybe I really should get a boyfriend. I asked a friend of mine for advice, and she held a home party for me. That's when I met Chris. Chris is the same age as me, and works for an IT company too, so we had a lot to talk about. We started dating, and the relationship continued smoothly, and we got to know each other better and better. He's very family-oriented, and I got to meet his family early on. I was often invited to his parents' house for dinner. Mary, nice to meet you. I'm Chris's mom, Catherine. I'm his dad, Mike. Nice to meet you. I'm Mary. Hi, I'm Chris's sister, Kate. I didn't know Chris had such a cute girlfriend. His family seemed very nice. Do you have any food you don't like? No, I can eat anything. Chris has a lot of picky eaters. Oh, that's a childhood thing. Well, what did Chris hate? He hated broccoli and asparagus. I had to shred it and put it in meat. Oh, really? Mom, stop it. You're embarrassing me. A friendly and happy family. That's what I always wanted. My parents divorced when I was in middle school. I lived with my dad, and my sister lived with my mom. My sister and I didn't get along very well, so when I found out that we were going to be separated, I wasn't that sad. The reason why my dad and mom divorced was that both of them loved their work and didn't want to do housework for us at all. In the end, they decided to divorce, taking one child, and do the housework equally. Both my dad and mom had high incomes, so neither of us had trouble living. My dad was not indifferent, but basically left me alone and let me be free. I really wanted to be independent. I thought the best way for that was to go to a high-level university and get a job at a good company. So I studied really hard. Then I was able to get a job at one of the most famous IT companies in the world. But I had never felt family love. So I adored Chris's warm family. Think of us as your other family. I guess Chris said so because he knew my family situation. I was regularly invited to his parents' house for dinner. His sister Kate seems to think of me as a real sister and asks me about work. After graduating from university, Kate got a job at a dishonest company. Long hours, no overtime pays, and too much work. So she quit and is now working part-time at an ice cream shop. But now she's looking for a full-time job and asks me for advice. Thank you, Mary. This is very helpful. It's okay, Kate. I like talking to you. Mary, you are like a real big sister. I always wanted a big sister. Oh, that's so sweet. My sister never thanked me for anything, and she wasn't as nice as you at all. Oh, really? Then let's go to lots of places together. Great, let's do that. Wow, I'm so happy. I have many cafes and restaurants I want to visit with you. Okay, then let's go there when we have a day off on the same day. Yay, I'm so excited. Kate was really cute, and I was glad that I got to know her. It was around this time that Chris proposed to me out of the blue. Mary, will you marry me? I wanna build a warm family with you. I was so happy, and we told Chris's family that he proposed to me, and we are getting married. Oh, you're finally getting married. Finally, Chris proposed to you. Now you're going to be my sister-in-law. His family was so happy. We'll have to talk about the wedding and stuff. Chris looked so happy. That day, we had dinner there and left. Mary, are you getting married? Yes, I'm finally getting married. Congratulations. Thank you. People at work congratulated me. On the next holiday, we were invited to Chris's parents' house again for lunch. On the way, Chris said, I have something important to tell you later. Okay. Chris said happily, so I guess it will be something good. When we arrived at his parents' house, there was a stuffed turkey on the table. Are you celebrating something today? Chris's mom smiled and said, I'm so happy to think that Mary is going to be my daughter-in-law. She looked cute as she said it shyly. We opened a cold beer and enjoyed turkey. It's nice to have something to celebrate. After some light chit-chat, Chris said, Oh, I forgot to tell you something important. I'm thinking of going to the marriage registry today. What? Actually, I've already prepared it. I was surprised. Sure, we are going to marriage registry, but why today? Is today a special day? No, it's not like that. Then why are we going today? I just wanted to get it done as soon as possible. Why not after the wedding? The wedding is still a long way off. When we visited several restaurants, we found one that we really liked and decided to have our wedding there. However, it was a very popular restaurant, so we were able to make a reservation a few months later. I think we should wait until after the wedding. No, I want to be married to you as soon as possible. The sooner the better for us too. Mary, I agree with Chris. You should get married as soon as possible. We were going to find an apartment which is in the middle of Chris's work and my work. Yeah, about that. We were thinking of moving into this house together. What? I was so surprised. Well, I thought we'd be living alone. I mean, it'll take time to find an apartment. We have to prepare for the wedding too. Then I think it would be better to live at my parents' house first and take our time to look for an apartment to live in. Chris may have a point, but I'm worried to live with his family. And I don't have a good impression of living together with my family. Chris's family members are all nice, but will they really be okay? We're already ready to welcome you into our family. We understand your family situation, so you don't have to worry about anything. I thought at this point I could live with them. Okay, thank you so much. Then let's go to the marriage registry. Kate said so, and Chris and his parents agreed. I said, okay, let's do it. And we all decided to go to the marriage bureau together. Kate, who didn't drink alcohol, drove the car and we arrived there. I must have had too many beers and I was a bit nervous that I had to go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom before submitting the marriage registration form. When I came back from the bathroom, Chris's parents and Kate were talking happily. I checked the marriage registration form and submitted it to a clerk with Chris. The clerk said, well, let me check it for you, and received it. While waiting, Chris walked to his family in a good mood. With him, I could build a happy family and get along well with his family. Just when I was thinking that, I heard worrisome words in the conversation between Chris and his family. It took a long time. Once they submit the marriage registration form, she won't be able to escape from us easily. I finally got my servant. I won't have to work now either. Chris, you did really well. From now on, we can live luxuriously. Yes, I want a brand bag. I want golf clubs. I'll even let her do all the housework. I couldn't believe what I've just heard. What are these people talking about? As I froze in surprise, the clerk was opening her eyes wide. Apparently she heard that too. Maybe Chris and his family were so happy that they didn't realize they were talking louder than they thought. The clerk looked at me and whispered, there's no omission, but I'll give this back to you, and gently handed the marriage registration form back to me. I whispered, thank you so much, and put it in my bag. After I put it in my bag, Chris came to me. Has it been submitted with no problem? Yes. Then let's go home. I followed Chris's family. They used to look like a warm, friendly family, but now they just look scary. That day, they drove me home, but the next day, Chris told me that we got married and we should live together at his parents' house now. I said okay, and decided to move into his parents' house to find out if that conversation was true. Of course, I pretended that I canceled my apartment and told Chris that I would deal with everything by myself, saying that I would sell my stuff to a recycling company soon. And we started living together at his parents' house. As soon as I arrived there, the attitude of Chris's family changed. Mary, I will manage all the finances in this house, so put all your salary into this house. What? And Chris agreed with her. I'm sure my mom will take care of it well. She will give you money for lunch and other things. And she will manage household finances well. Oh, really? That's right. So don't worry about giving me your entire salary. Oh, and one more important thing. Do all the housework. What? Do you have a problem with that? I'm working, so it's a bit of a burden doing all the housework. Oh, are you such a coward who won't even try from the start? What? Shut your mouth and do all the chores. Now you're our daughter-in-law. Chris's dad said this with the scariest look he had ever shown me. And even Kate said, I like your brown bags. Buy some for me too. And Chris said, Mary, you are now my wife and a member of the family, so do everything we tell you to. I realized that it's their real character. They had been trying to take advantage of me from the beginning. I don't want to. What? What did you say? I can't accept everything you just told me. I won't do all the housework. I won't give you my entire salary. When I said that, Chris and his family got really angry. Hey Mary, what are you talking about? You're our daughter-in-law. Just do what we tell you to. Your value is only to enrich our lives. They raised their voices. I'm not your daughter-in-law. What? You had the conversation at the marriage bureau, didn't you? After that conversation, I decided not to register our marriage. Their faces turned pale. Oh, fudge. Are you sure you didn't give it to them? Why don't you check with the marriage bureau? I already put the marriage registration form in the trash. I can't live with people who take advantage of me. Let's just break up, Chris. Chris fell into a heap. I left the house. Apparently, they had already made plans to go on an overseas trip with their family of 4, and have even booked a luxury hotel and a first-class airline tickets because they thought they would get all my salaries. The day I broke up with Chris was already the day before the trip, so they had to pay a lot of cancellation fees. Chris asked me to pay the cancellation fee, but of course I refused, and immediately blocked him from contacting me. Now they have around $50,000 in debt, and they're all cursing each other. They were only connected with money. Chris's family didn't have a very good relationship either. Mary, did you cancel the marriage? Oh, Justin, have you heard about that already? Rumors really do spread fast, don't they? You can laugh if you want. I'm not laughing. I'm happy. What? Why? Because that means I have a chance. What? He looked embarrassed when he said that. A few months later, he asked me to date him. And he proposed to me recently. I'm so happy now. Chris and his family are a bit scary. They've been only nice to Mary from the beginning to take advantage of her. I'm glad she found out their true nature just before they got married. I was wondering about the rest of the story with Justin, but for now, I wish Mary a happy marriage this time. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel if you like. See you in the next video.
A friend of my mother-in-law witnessed the scene of her bullying me. What comes after that was horrible.
As soon as my mother-in-law saw that I was resting, she started. "What are you doing? You are such a slacker. You disgust me, Tina." My mother-in-law kept the volume of her voice down so her friends couldn't hear her. But she said a lot of abusive things to me. Oh, shoot. I just sat there with my head down, waiting for the storm to pass. Then, my mother-in-law's friends came up to me with a pale face. "Oh, how dare you talk to her like that?" My name is Tina. I'm a 35-year-old housewife. I met my husband John through a friend. He had a nice smile and was kind. The word good man was perfect for him. We hit it off right away, and we started dating. We continued to date steadily for a few years, and my husband proposed to me. I was so happy to marry the man I loved. We greeted each other's parents, had a wedding and honeymoon. From then on, we lived a happy married life. However, about 2 years into our marriage, my husband decided to go on a long business trip overseas. But it had always been one of my husband's dreams to work abroad. I had been standing next to him and watching his efforts, so I was happy when the overseas business trip was decided. But at the same time, we found out that I was pregnant. My husband and I had a hard time wrapping our heads around it. It would be very disconcerting to be alone for a year while I was pregnant. I thought about going to stay with my mother, but in fact, my mother had just recently remarried, and I really don't want to disturb her. Then, my husband suggested that we stay with my mother-in-law for a year. My mother-in-law lost her husband last year, so she'd be lonely and alone. "Tina, you would be safe to have my mom around, right? She can help you take care of the housework." I thought it was a very great idea. I had a good impression of my mother-in-law at the time. So my husband decided to go talk to her about moving in together. She smiled and said yes. I was very lucky to have such a kind mother-in-law. We moved our belongings to my parents-in-law's house and started living together. A few days later, my husband left for the business trip overseas. My mother-in-law and I saw him off and went home. But as soon as we got home, she changed. "Tina, I've been watching you for the past few days, and you are completely hopeless." "What?" "It's terrible to have such a useless daughter-in-law at home. I pity John. Maybe he got fed up with you." "What? Please don't say such a thing." My mother-in-law's gentle smile is gone, and she started abusing me. "You're not worthy of John. You stole my precious son. I took such good care of him. Why did he marry someone like you?" My mother-in-law seemed to be doting on her only son, a brilliant young man. My husband graduated from a prestigious university and worked for a big company. She was always praised by the neighbors and was very proud of him. So when we got married, she might felt I had taken her son away from her. I think she actually resented me. "You fooled my son. You bitch. I really hate the fact that I have to feed you. But I'll be responsible for raising my grandchild, because John's gene is in it." My mother-in-law was always saying things like that. I don't know if she was serious or joking. At first, I thought that she would eventually stop bullying me. But my mother-in-law was persistent. The way she was acting
She was really trying to break us up as a couple and even take my baby away from me. I couldn't talk to my husband about it because he was busy with his work overseas, which he wasn't used to doing. Besides, my mother-in-law was always praising me when she contacted my husband so that he wouldn't find out that she was picking on me. Even if I had just talked to my husband about it, he wouldn't have believed me. And my mother-in-law's bullying continued daily. It was at a family gathering. "Tina, you are not my family. When you have finished preparing everyone's meals, go to the kitchen and eat alone." That's what she said to me. Well, I was rather grateful to be alone in the kitchen because I didn't have to look at my mother-in-law's face. However, it was getting harder and harder for me to deal with her bullying. After all, I was pregnant, and as the days went by, I began to feel sick with morning sickness. This made it hard to cook, clean the house, and such. But my mother-in-law was unrelenting. "You are such a useless person. How long are you going to take to clean?" "I'm sorry, but I'm suffering from morning sickness." "What? Don't you dare make excuses." "But I'm sure you had the same experience when you were pregnant, didn't you?" "What are you talking about? Don't put me together with an ordinary person like you. Pregnancy is not a disease." My mother-in-law never cared about my physical condition and continued to abuse me. And not only did she abuse me, but she also insulted my mother. "Your mother's, I wonder if you inherited your mother's stench." "What do you mean?" "Because you don't have a father. Didn't your father run away from your mother? Because she's a damn person like you." This is terrible. How could she say such a heartless thing? My father died of illness when I was 5 years old. My mother raised me by herself. "Oh, I see. So you must have been very poor. No wonder you have no class. You're even more out of place with John. I wonder why he married such a disappointing woman like you." My mother-in-law's attitude made me emotionally upset. "That's enough! It's me you don't like, not my mother. My mother worked so hard to support me. She recently remarried and is very happy with her life. Don't insult my mother. You're still a savage woman. You're the one who made her look like a fool. If you want to hate me, hate your own incompetence." I had reached my limit. It's really painful to be under stress every day as a pregnant woman. Why does my mother-in-law insult me so much? It's hard to believe that we are the same human being. No matter how much I talk back and fight with her, my mother-in-law never learns her lesson and orders me to do this and that. I once got so mad that I stayed in my room instead of doing my chores. But then, she blocked the doorway so that I couldn't go to the bathroom. When I desperately shouted at her to open the door, she just laughed at me. "If you want me to open the door, you must apologize to me with sincerity. You are a million years too young to disobey me. You are my slave and my housekeeper, so you will always listen to me." I had no choice but to apologize to my mother-in-law in desperation. When she finally opened the door for me, I was on the verge of leaking. It was so painful. I was about to be traumatized for the rest of my life. I was breaking out in a cold sweat and rushing to the bathroom. My mother-in-law laughed out loud at me as I hurriedly went to the bathroom, sweating. it would have been too dangerous to take her seriously. I thought so, and decided to endure my mother-in-law's abuse and be obediently. Then one day, a little later, my mother-in-law told me that some of her friends were coming over. I have some important guests coming over today, and among them is the wife of the president of the Future Incorporation. I'm sure she'll be offended if she talks to a poor woman like you. So, you must not interrupt me at all. My mother-in-law is still abusing me, but my husband will be back in a few months. Until then, it's safer to stay quiet and do as my mother-in-law says. Okay, what should I do? Well, in the meantime, I'd appreciate if you could clean the house thoroughly. And of course, make sure to prepare tea and sweets. My mother-in-law looked so proud of herself when she said that. I wonder how much more she needs to abuse me to make herself feel better. I rushed to the sweets boutique to buy some luxury sweets that my mother-in-law had recommended. When I returned home, I prepared a fancy plate and made the tea perfectly ready. A little while later, my mother-in-law's friends arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them with a big smile on her face. But the smile was not the kind she would give to someone she knew well. It was more like a strange smile. She must have felt that she would benefit from being friends with these people. I wondered if I could really call them friends. But since it was my mother-in-law, I didn't pay much attention to it and went about my business. Tina, can you hurry up and prepare some tea? Yes, ma'am. In a second. I hurriedly served tea and sweets to my mother-in-law's friends. I don't know who they are, since I'm meeting them for the first time. I treated them politely, so as not to be rude. Oh, thank you. One of my mother-in-law's friends thanked me. I see you're pregnant. You must be looking forward to having a baby soon. Yes, she's kicking my belly now. I'm hoping to see her soon too. I'm sure you are going to have a lovely, healthy baby. I thought they were kind, elegant people, kind of nice. But soon I felt a look from my mother-in-law, and I had to leave right then and there. I'm sure she's scolding at me for being rude and unnecessary. I bowed them and left quickly. After that, I did as my mother-in-law told me and cleaned the house. It's not easy when you're pregnant. So I decided to take a break and went to the kitchen to have some tea and catch my breath. Just then, I bumped into my mother-in-law, who came to take down the plates. As soon as my mother-in-law saw that I was resting, she started. What are you doing? You are such a slacker. You disgust me, Tina. My mother-in-law kept the volume of her voice down so her friends couldn't hear her. But she said a lot of abusive things to me. Oh, shoot. I just sat there with my head down, waiting for the storm to pass. Then, a friend of my mother-in-law's came up to me with a pale face. How dare you talk to her like that? My mother-in-law turned her head toward the voice and instantly started panicking. What? What's the matter? Mrs. Green. It seemed that this woman is the wife of the Future Incorporation's president. I was just wondering if I could use your restroom. And then I saw you hurling abusive language at her. I'm terribly sorry. She's my daughter-in-law, and I've been trying to teach her a few things. The president's wife's eye widened in surprise. You don't know who this person is, do you? She is the daughter of the president of a company called IBX. What? The IBX? Yes. Her mother's company is an important business partner of my husband's company. Does that mean that the company my son works for is an important business partner? That's right. But I don't care if your son works there or not. If my husband's company goes under because of you, how will you take the blame? I couldn't hide my surprise at the unexpected connection. It seems that Mrs. Green had recently become friends with my mother through her husband. When she visited my parents' house, my mother showed her pictures of me and she knew my face. She also noticed that my mother-in-law had called me by my name and recognized me as the same person. But I was gone before she could talk to me back then, so she thought she would talk to me later. Of course, my mother-in-law didn't know about it, and she let Mrs. Green see her bullying me. Oh no, Mrs. Green, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. My mother-in-law apologized to her in a panic. But Mrs. Green did not forgive her. If you want to apologize, apologize to her. You said terrible things to hurt her. Right, Tina? And what kind of nerve does it take to put a pregnant woman through all this hard work? Apologize to her right now for the terrible things you've done. When Mrs. Green said this, my mother-in-law turned to me with shifty eyes and said her sorry. I'm not in the mood to have tea anymore. So, I'd like to leave now, Mrs. Green said and started to get ready to leave. The other friends were surprised to see what was going on. But when she said she was leaving, they all got ready and left together. Oh no, I'm screwed. My mother-in-law was slumped down on the spot. After that, my mother-in-law changed her attitude in a sickening flip-flop way. Please, tell your mother that nothing happened. I had no idea you were the daughter of such a well-known family. I was so disgusted with her. That's enough. I've been treated so badly by you. I can't pretend that it didn't happen. And you've been making fun of my mother for a long time. You had no interest in what she was doing for a living. You didn't even remember why she became a single mother. I will never forgive you. Wait, Tina. If you don't forgive me, my son's future will be ruined. What are you talking about? It was only you who caused me pain. My husband did nothing wrong. In fact, I have already told my mother what happened. She was furious that her daughter was treated that way. Also, when Mrs. Green found out that my mother was angry, she decided that she would never have anything to do with you. Her friends also seemed to think the same way. In addition, I recorded our conversation when you were abusing me. Huh? Not all of it, but you were abusive to me every day. So I gathered a lot of evidence. I also got a medical certificate recently, so I can sue you for it. Oh no, this is not happening. And I've already told my husband everything. He said I can sue you and he will sever ties with you. No, please tell me you were just saying that. You've done horrible things as a human being. It's only natural for you to be abandoned by everyone. I don't want to be in a place like this anymore, so I'm leaving. My mother gave me a room at my parents' house. My mother-in-law had already let go and didn't seem to hear me at the end of the conversation. She had offended people she shouldn't have offended. After that, My mother-in-law seemed to be spending her days alone and lonely. I, on the other hand, went back to my parents' house and gave birth to a healthy baby girl. And my husband returned home safely after his business trip. He was overjoyed to see me and the baby.
I'm so sorry for all the pain you've been going through because of my mom.
It's my fault for not talking to you about it, so don't apologize.
From now on, I will always be by your side, Tina. I'll protect you and this beautiful baby girl, my precious family.
Yeah, the three of us will stay together, and we'll be happy together. My husband and I hugged each other. Then we looked at our sweet daughter, who was sleeping peacefully with a big smile on her face. Thank you for watching till the end. Please subscribe to our channel if you like. See you in the next video.
I feel embarrassed saying this, but sending $2,100 a month is tough with my living expenses, even if it's for my grandchild. He might get mad, but can you, as his wife, tell him about this? I received a call from my mother-in-law, Barbara, while I was in my final month of pregnancy. Confused, I asked her what she meant. Sending money? What are you talking about? You just had your baby, right? When I sent a gift for the baby, my son told me you guys are struggling and to send $2,100 every month for the grandchild. You didn't know about this? Wait, what? Hold on. But my baby hasn't been born yet. What? Now it was her turn to be stunned. I carefully explained that my due date was 3 weeks away and the baby was still in my belly. Then in shock, she muttered, Then what on earth was my son? Huh? We had no idea of the terrible truth that would soon come to light. My name is Ellen, a 31-year-old married woman. I used to be a civil servant. As I was approaching 30, worried about not having a boyfriend, I asked a friend if she knew any nice guys. That's how I met Alex, who would become my husband. Alex, a corporate employee of the same age, treated me really well during our relationship. I felt I could envision a future with him. After dating for a year, he proposed, and I joyfully accepted. My parents lived about a 15-minute drive from my apartment. When I brought him to meet them, they were overjoyed and blessed our marriage. Next, it was time to visit his family. His father had passed away when he was in high school, and it seemed his mother lived alone. After an 8-hour drive, we finally arrived at his remote family home. The house was large and impressive, and I, coming from a modest background, was overwhelmed. I heard that his mother came from an old family and had enough rental income to live comfortably without working, even after his father's death. The first time I met her, she greeted me very politely. Thank you for coming all this way. She seemed soft-spoken and classy. Inside the house, she was always smiling and supported our marriage. Ellen, since Alex is an only child, I might have spoiled him a bit. If there's anything bothering you, feel free to set him straight.
Hey, Mom.
His comment made us all laugh, and the visit was pleasant throughout. Later, both families met, and all went well. Barbara attended the wedding with a big smile. I was happy to have such a nice mother-in-law. Although she lived far away and we didn't meet often, we maintained a good relationship through gifts and birthdays. However, my relationship with Alex changed drastically 6 months after our wedding. We used to return home around the same time and would cook dinner while enjoying conversations. He started working late and spending less time at home. Our conversations decreased, and he often went out on weekends, leaving me feeling lonely. One day I decided to talk to Alex after he came home late. Hey, Alex, you've been coming home late lately, haven't you? I understand work is tough, but we're still newlyweds. I wish you'd spend more time with me. He responded irritably.
I'm busy with work right now. Please, understand.
But at least a little more time together.
Enough. You wouldn't understand being a cushy government worker. Corporate jobs are tough. Just stop talking about it.
I was shocked by his words. I took my job seriously and didn't appreciate him belittling it. More than that, his harsh words hurt me. Afterwards, he continued to be busy with work and was rarely home. With him away, all the household chores fell on me. It was quite a challenge to handle all the housework for two while working. We still talked normally and had an intimate life, but I always felt dissatisfied. Then, during our first year of marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. It'd be nice to have a child soon, wouldn't it? It was the pregnancy we had hoped for. After using a test kit, I went to my OBGYN to confirm the pregnancy.
You're 9 weeks along. You can see the heartbeat right here.
Seeing the small baby on the ultrasound screen and hearing the heartbeat, I was thrilled and waited for Alex to come home. He returned late, as usual. I prepared a lavish dinner and waited for him.
What's the occasion? The dinner looks fancy. Something happen?
When he asked, I eagerly showed him the ultrasound photo. Guess what? We're pregnant. Our baby is growing inside me. His reaction was unexpected.
What? You too?
Huh? What do you mean, you two? Is someone else we know pregnant? Puzzled, I asked him. He coughed exaggeratedly.
No, I mean, you are?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am. Aren't you happy?
Of course I'm happy. It's our long-awaited child.
He said that and gently touched my stomach. At that time, I had no doubts and was wrapped in happiness. Soon after, I started experiencing severe morning sickness. It was worse than I imagined, like being seasick all day, often bedridden. Naturally, I couldn't do any housework. One day, when Alex came home late and found me in bed, he asked,
Hey, are you sleeping? Where's my dinner?
Oh, I'm sorry. The morning sickness was so bad I couldn't cook. I apologized, feeling guilty, but he clicked his tongue.
You're not using morning sickness as an excuse to skip housework, are you?
What? No, I really feel terrible.
Pregnancy isn't an illness. Stop being so lazy.
That's not fair. As I stood speechless, he left the house again. I never expected to be treated like this during my pregnancy, and I was just dumbfounded. Afterward, although my morning sickness subsided, my husband remained distant. He was still busy with work, doing overtime and working on weekends, hardly ever at home. Feeling vulnerable during my pregnancy, I tried to express this to him, but he just gave short, indifferent responses. As I entered my 6th month of pregnancy and it became more stable, I decided to tell my mother-in-law about it. When I called her after a long time, she sounded delighted to hear from me.
Hi, Ellen. What's up?
Hi, Barbara. I haven't been in touch for a while. I have some news to share. I'm pregnant and due in 4 months. She was overjoyed at the news.
Really? I'm going to have a grandchild? That's wonderful.
I can't travel easily because it's far, but I'll bring the baby to meet you after it's born.
Thank you. Can I send something for you to eat during pregnancy?
After I happily agreed, she asked me.
I haven't heard from Alex at all. Is he doing okay? Are you two getting along?
I hesitated for a moment, not wanting to reveal the truth to such a kind woman. I said we were doing fine and soon ended the call. Even at 8 months pregnant, Alex was rarely home. He didn't participate in choosing a name for the baby and often went on business trips, returning home late on weekdays. I worried about whether everything would be okay with the baby coming soon, but by then I had gotten used to his absence. As my due date approached, I struggled to walk with my protruding belly, having finished almost all preparations for the baby's arrival. Then I received a call from Barbara. A call from Barbara? I wonder what it's about. She rarely calls me. Thinking that, I answered the call. Hello, Barbara.
Hi, Ellen. It's been a while. How are you and the baby doing?
I responded while feeling the baby move. Yes, the baby is active right now.
That's good to hear. Actually, I called today because...
She hesitated to continue. What's wrong, Barbara?
I feel embarrassed saying this, but sending $2,100 a month for the grandchild is tough on my finances. Alex might get mad, but can you talk to him about it?
I asked her, not understanding. Sending money? What do you mean?
You just had your baby, right? When I sent a gift for the baby, my son told me you guys are struggling and to send $2,100 every month for the grandchild. Didn't you know?
Hold on. But my baby hasn't been born yet.
What?
Now it was her turn to be surprised. I explained that my due date was 3 weeks away and the baby was still in my belly. She then murmured,
Then what on earth was my son?
Huh? She revealed, her voice trembling.
Alex told me you hated me and didn't want me to call. And then a month ago, he said the grandchild was born and asked me to send a gift.
That's not true. I don't hate you at all. And as I just said, my baby hasn't been born yet. So what happened after that?
I told him I wanted to see my grandchild at least once. He said he'd bring the baby and told me not to bother you. I was shocked to think you hated me that much, but I was happy to meet my grandchild.
As I nodded, she continued.
A few days later, Alex showed up alone with the baby and left quickly. I thought it was your child, so when he asked for money for the grandchild, I couldn't refuse.
When I asked about the day he came, it was the same day he had told me he was on a business trip. I confided in her about his absence and the way he treated me during my pregnancy. After hearing everything, she pondered for a while.
Ellen, I have an idea.
I listened to her suggestion and nodded firmly. Weeks passed, and as my due date was just 5 days away, I stood in front of an apartment and knocked on the door. A woman peeked out.
A salesperson at this hour? I'm busy with a baby. Please leave.
I wedged my foot in the door and spoke in a low voice. You're Kate, right? You know me, I'm Alex's wife. The woman's face turned pale, but I pushed my way into the house. Opening the living room door, I saw Alex, frozen in surprise, and a baby sleeping in a crib.
Ellen, what are you doing here?
I'm here too.
Before he could respond, my mother-in-law appeared behind him.
What? Mom too?
Let's have a talk, shall we? I made the pale-faced Kate and Alex sit together, with my mother-in-law and me facing them.
How did you find this place?
Trembling, he muttered, and I explained to him. I told him how his strange behavior was uncovered through the phone call with his mother and how we pieced together that something was wrong, and that she hired a detective.
She hired a detective?
I'm a victim of your deception too. Of course I'd use a detective for myself and my daughter-in-law.
Hearing her firm words, he hung his head.
Now, tell us the truth with your own mouth.
He started to speak reluctantly. He met Kate, a temp worker at his office, about 6 months after our marriage. He found her attractive and made a move. Kate was okay with them being married, so they began a relationship. Eventually, she got pregnant, and it was certainly his child. Then I announced my pregnancy, and Kate, maybe feeling competitive, said she wanted to keep the baby too. She realized she had gone too far to turn back and decided to have the baby. To support her and the child without alerting me, he tricked his mother into sending $2,100 every month. The baby he took to his mother's house was Kate's, born before mine. Hearing this, I sighed deeply. Did you really think you'd never get caught?
I thought it would work if I convinced you that you hated my mom.
And what do you plan to do now?
Ellen, please forgive me. I don't want to leave you. Please.
What about her and the child? You plan to just abandon them?
I'll leave them. Let's live together. Just the three of us with our child, okay? We've always been together, right?
Hearing his words, Kate looked at him in shock. His selfishness infuriated me. Don't underestimate women, you self-centered jerk. Just as I was about to yell at my husband, Barbara stood up and slapped him hard.
Mom, what was that for?
Your audacity is unbelievable. You deceived me and Ellen, and now you want to abandon your mistress and child? You can't get away with that.
But...
He was flustered by his usually gentle mother's anger. I declared to him, I'll never forgive you both. I'll demand compensation from you two. And Alex, I expect plenty of child support from you. Make sure you pay every single penny.
But...
Leaving a despairing Alex and a stunned Kate behind, my mother-in-law and I left. Later, I gave birth to a healthy baby. Soon after, my divorce from Alex was finalized, and thanks to Barbara's urging, the compensation was paid quickly. We agreed on a monthly child support payment. Kate's parents ended up paying her compensation, furious with her for having a child from an affair. They promised to take her back to the countryside. Thus, Alex and Kate broke up. As for him, it turned out his corporate job was through connections from Barbara's relatives. His affair with Kate had already become a rumor at work, but he couldn't be fired due to the connections. But Barbara told her relatives to fire him, resulting in him losing his job. She then handed him over to an acquaintance's fishing boat. Now, having lost everything, he's working hard on the boat every day.
I'll make sure he pays the child support,
she assured me, and I was grateful. As for me, I returned to my parents' home with my newborn, living peaceful days. It was Barbara that named the baby, and I often visit her with my son. I hope he grows up strong and kind like his mother. I look forward to watching my son grow.